Good morning, good. Oh, I've forgotten to put my camera up. There we go. Ha! Good morning. Good. Everyone's laughing in production there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name's Don Robinson. Welcome to another edition of SMAdvancedForum. It's April the 1st. It should be Fool's Day, but I think if the tradition is if you do a fool's joke after midday, then it has to come back on you. So I haven't been coding in .NET this week. That would have been a joke. Only an in-joke. So this week we're going to shuffle things around and we're going to ask Mark to take the MC's reins and to lead us through the show so I can fumble around with technology in the background. Mark, are you out there?
I am, sir. How are you this morning?
Not bad.
Or this afternoon, as the case may be.
I'm very good. Yes, it's funny. We've seen some sun here. My flesh was peeling because I'm an Englishman in the sun. But I've got my hat on to protect myself, so we're all good.
You melt like a vampire.
And have you seen any rain, snow, or any weather other than sun your side of the world?
It is 82 degrees Fahrenheit today here.
Right.
It's lovely. It's a lovely April 1st, and that's no joke. And I will remind everyone that I am in the hospital dying of COVID is not a funny April Fool's joke. Just no, FYI. Of course not. No. Just throwing it out there.
Has that been going on?
There have been a few. I have had to remind a few people that it's not ripe for not ripe for humor. But yeah, no, things are good. Things are good. My children are ruling my life, and business is excellent. And we're doing all sorts of fun events. Things are starting to come back finally. Just this past month, we've started to see a sharp uptick in actual content related events, as opposed to the virtualization of corporate events and things like that. So I think things are about to get fun again. I hope. Fingers crossed.
Good, excellent. Take us on through the hosts that are here and then the guests, Mark.
Yes, indeed. So I believe we have Tim is on, although I can't see him in the gallery view. So there we go. There's Tim. Tim Siglin. How are you today? You're muted, I think.
Actually, am I still muted? Because
no, you're good.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, unlike you, Mark, with the "it never rains in San Diego" thing, we've had flooding here. It's about -6 degrees Celsius today, this morning, but it's supposed to get to about 80 Fahrenheit tomorrow. So the beauty in Tennessee is you never know what the weather's going to be. Just stick around for a couple minutes and it changes. From my standpoint, you're talking about an uptick. I'm actually, we're doing 3 surveys for streaming media and the Content Delivery Summit, which it used to be really hard to get people to do surveys. And all of a sudden, in the space of the last 2 months, we've had multiple companies come forward and ask for surveys. So that's keeping me pretty busy.
Fantastic. What's the subject matter of the surveys?
The first survey, well, I'll go in reverse order. So Dom, of course, is hosting Content Delivery Summit. We're working on one around edge computing and how people are using edge computing to sort of understand whether that's an anomaly or whether that's sort of a consistent trend forward. And we all have our opinions, but the beauty of surveys is that you get to find out what the industry as a whole thinks. The second one is, let's see, the second one's around the idea of virtual events and virtual conferences and whether they're going to continue. Got a really interesting sponsor on that one. And then the one that we wrapped up and are actually getting ready to write a report on is OTT Trends. We'd done OTT Trends about 3.5 years ago. Toolix actually sponsored this one. I can talk about who sponsored it now that the survey's done. But we went back and asked questions as basic as what's your sweet spot for OTT in terms of bandwidth, in terms of resolution and that kind of thing. So there's some really good details that'll come out of that.
Fantastic. Love to hear more about the virtual events survey. That's a lot of what we're doing these days. So we'll move on to our guests. First, Nadine Samra. Nadine, I'll allow you to correctly pronounce the name of your company, but you're the Chief Business Officer at...
Oh, yeah. That's an
you don't have to mention your companies on Snaps.
Yeah, so Wayak is an Arabic name and it means with you. So it's an OTT platform. It has content targeting Arabs wherever they are. We are a global platform. At the same time, we are part of Z Entertainment. Z Entertainment, the Indian TV broadcaster, is our mother company. And Wayak as a company really is the OTT that targets Arabs wherever they are.
Excellent. Fantastic. And then on to Will Dudink. How are you?
Yeah.
Will?
Hi, Mark. Yeah, I'm fine. So I'm the managing director of SMAdvancedForum, which is a multi-CDN company. So we actually provide a multi-CDN solution in the gaming and enterprise market under the SMAdvancedForum brand, but we also have this product in the broadcast and media market, and there we have the Eurovision Flow brand, well known from the European Broadcasting Union. So we have that brand to provide the services over there. And yeah, been in streaming for quite some time now, so we're more than happy to be here on the forum.
Fantastic. And I think Eric will not be joining us today. Is that the consensus, Dom?
I'm getting messages that he's fighting fires. He's going to be with us if he can. So he might just suddenly kick the door in and arrive with cream cakes with any luck. Or pizza. It depends on the time, your time zone.
Fantastic. Well, we'll look forward to that. So I think we were talking about a little before we started here, a little bit of the background behind SMAF, behind the Streaming Media Advanced Forum. Did you want to go into that? I believe you were involved slightly before I was. On the original, but this is all about two decades ago.
Yeah, I'm sure we met on the Advanced Forum. We don't talk about this enough, actually, and Mark's right. So we should occasionally reintroduce what SMAF is all about. But probably 2003 or 4 when
definitely before then. Definitely before then. I was at Navisite, which would have been 2000, 2001, somewhere around there.
So yeah, just back about 98, 99, Dom, because that was Eric came on in 2003 as the editor, and it had been under.
I was sort of timing it from there, and there's sort of mixed history in the previous bit, but there was definitely a mailing list. That's the important thing in the early 2000s, which was a simple list server mailing list, and it was. Because it was at the back end of streamermedia.com, where the few techies that were interested in these sciences were hanging out, and it was the advanced forum, so it was where people were talking in deeper code to each other rather than how do I use a player. It was more how do I build a player or how do I make a stream happen. The maybe 50 or 100 people that used to hang out on that list and have fierce battles about whether real media was better than Windows Media, or MP3 needed to be streamed or simply work as a progressive download, or whether progressive downloading was actually streaming or not. There was some fantastic, very esoteric discussions that went very deep. And most of the people on that list have bubbled up into very senior roles in technical or biz dev sides of streaming companies. You know, we were all just absolutely enamored with the idea of being able to go out and do the equivalent of what a big broadcast group could do with, you know, a couple of bits of string and a bin liner. And today they're CTOs of large blue chip companies and so on and so forth. So even though the mailing list got disbanded around about the time social media kind of took everyone's spare minutes of the day, there was a sense of trying to keep that network together. And so we started up SMAdvancedForum to try to rekindle that connection. And we started, all our early guests were people who were networked through SMAdvancedForum. But in order to keep it fresh, we fixed the traditional hosts of myself, Mark and Tim. And because of the heritage of streaming media, we often have Eric join us as well when he can. And now we rely on sort of word of mouth to network you guys, and we have a lot of support from women in streaming media. So we always fill a guest with that chair to try to acknowledge the challenges that women have in the industry. And SMAF is today what it is. So yeah, we are. Well, I might bring this up if we talk a bit more about Discord later, but I think it might be time to extend what we do as a community a bit beyond our once a month meeting. But for now, that's the background to SMAF. So.
I agree. It's actually a nice segue into talking about Discord. You've recently become enamored with the platform. What are your thoughts? I'm curious to hear how we're going to extend the brand, if you will.
So, as I so often do, I tinker with a hobby internet radio show, and I was having a problem with community management. And what I was finding is over the sort of 10 years we've been running that, we splintered out into little crew groups on all sorts of different platforms that should all have been in one place. And that meant I had to be connected to all of them all the time, which then meant I was distracted by a million different notification channels. And that was a challenge for me. And also the key forums that we had weren't connected to the social media network. They were disjointed platforms which you needed to message about to get people to tune into different things. So I went looking for a system where I could have a forum in a web page which was also connected to a community that was built into an app that had notifications. And I went looking for a couple of years because the change management, when you've got 65-year-old DJs who can barely see the screen, and you've got kids who always want to be on the latest technology, and you've got you know, people our age who are technically competent, and all sorts of people. The challenge was to make that move and make it once. And around the beginning of the year, Discord started to tick all my boxes. I could integrate my forums. I could do some of the video work we do. I could keep the crew community separated from the audience community, but they'd all be in one place. So I started to integrate it. I put it to everyone, and the weirdest thing happened. In less than 7 days, a community, certainly the core crew community of about 60, 70 people, 70 DJs and acts, and then the audience, and everybody just abandoned everything else. They just dropped Facebook like a stone, dropped WhatsApp like a stone, Slack went dead, my company moved into Discord. And it was kind of like, oh, what happened there? Why does everyone like this? And I can't quite put my finger on why. It doesn't have a sense that you're being advertising data at any level. Probably are, but it doesn't have that same invasive sense that you get with WhatsApp and Facebook properties. And it combines the threading that's so convenient with Slack without the corporate. It's much more friendly for social things rather than you couldn't really hang out a radio crew in Slack. It's too business focused for some indescribable reason. But yeah, in the space of next to no time, suddenly all my messaging, my own personal messaging just moved to Discord in the space of, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And I barely touched anything else. And it's been, Skype went off, WhatsApp went off. I've still got them, I still log in to check them. But once we'd connected in Discord and used it, suddenly that was a much more manageable place to be. So now I'm.
It sounds, I mean, it's
really strange, very strange.
Echoes of what Slack was a few years ago. You know, it was the casual platform for, you know, that coders would, you know, use to speak very informally. It wasn't very business oriented, et cetera. And then it all of a sudden, overnight almost, it became the new email. It became the new de facto standard for business communication. So it'll be interesting to see.
Discord is the informal version of that.
Right, but you know, again, Slack was informal. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how quickly, Discord becomes the standard. We're certainly using it. Yeah, we'll talk after.
Keeping it streaming. I think the interesting thing about their business model is also that it's you pay a little bump premium to get higher quality streaming. Mm-hmm. That's their business model at the moment. So in a way,
part of it, yeah.
They're traffic resellers.
It'll be interesting to see if they, you know, when the pressure gets applied for them to build in some sort of marketing component to their business model.
Microsoft will drop it into formaldehyde and then give us 1,000 updates, which don't seem to do
anything. Yeah.
Mark, let's actually hear what our guests think about Discord. Yeah. This is something I'm not familiar with, and I'm really just interested to get a lot of different perspectives.
Absolutely. Nadine, Will, do you use Discord?
Am I on? No.
Yep.
So, I tried Discord, but we're still quite favorite for Slack. So we're using Slack for, let's say, for the engineers and for the developers. I've tried Discord a couple of times, but somehow we're still sticking to Slack. on the development and engineering side, and we have the standard teams side on the sales part of it.
Yeah, from
Nadine?
our side, yeah, we've used Slack, and probably surprisingly speaking, we use WhatsApp. So despite the fact that like a few years back, to be honest with you guys, I was too hesitant to use WhatsApp for anything to do with business side, whatever it is, just any type of communication. I was just against that, right? I mean, I thought it was not, you know, you wouldn't know what the conversation went. You cannot take decisions. I mean, how do you monitor or whatever? Like, I felt that, you know, having something documented on an email, or, you know, using whatever platform that you use, Jira or whatever, just to document the information, whatever, would be much better. And then time passes forward, and apparently I was just against these waves that are coming towards me, and I couldn't, you know, stop them. So right now I use WhatsApp regularly with my team for anything to do with promos. We do a lot of promos and advertising material for all of our content. Sometimes when we do productions as well, we just, you know, send small things, snippets or whatever, or behind the scenes, just to you know, get the feeling of what's happening. And suddenly I started to be more accepting of the fact that, yeah, okay, it's part of the life, and I can't say no anymore, and it's just there.
But I mean, I just wonder how you guys feel, because I mean, on a daily basis, I have Slack open, I have Teams open, I have Mattermost open, I have Skype open, and indeed you get messages via WhatsApp or just plain old text message, and you get your email. So you hear a beep, and you just have to realize, okay, which of the platforms is the one where I have to look at right now. So you get just overwhelmed with all these messages.
Even being able to go back and find the thread, like you were saying, Nadine, it's, you know, I use WhatsApp a lot because I've worked in India a lot, so it's sort of standard that what people want to use. But then when I'm trying to go back and find a thread, like Dom will send us something, and I'll be like, now, was that an email? Was that in iMessages? Was that in WhatsApp? Was it in Skype? And it doesn't seem like there's a really good tool to help us just sort of search across all those things at the OS level. Dom, is what you've described with Discord is sort of a combination of a bunch of things, but is there a way that it makes it easy that if I'm sitting on my Mac, like I do with Slack, that I can actually search and it'll pull Slack messages for me, just like it'll pull email messages for me to find the thread? And I think you're muted.
I am, yeah. So it's got advantages over a lot of the other platforms because of the tight integration of voice and video with the channelization of instant messaging threads.
Okay.
It's ostensibly very, very close to Zoom or to Slack or to Skype. It's really quite indiscernible what they've got right about it. It's very searchable, and it's I think it's quite useful that it's not tied to a phone, because I often found I wasn't with my phone and I couldn't get my, you know, WhatsApp suddenly breaks down if you're not with your phone. And then something about WhatsApp is designed to encourage engagement with something that's distracting you from what you're actually trying to do, whereas that doesn't seem to happen with Discord. It seems to be seems to make the chats and the discussions available without being quite so needy about making you stay on the platform when you've answered the question in the chat room, a bit like Skype does. Skype didn't demand that of you, but for some reason there's something about its usability which is indiscernibly good. Yeah, can't put my finger on it, but I think we should explore, sorry to branch into this so much, but I think we should really explore building our community for SMAF, because if we get a lot of the legacy community that we've had on here connected through being part of it, they can pick up in the group in Discord, but in a very informal context. If we did that on Slack or did that on LinkedIn, it just feels a bit too, I've got to kind of formally share sort of business stuff, whereas Discord has got that, oh look, there's a bunch of people in the auditorium. Let's go and have a chat. What are they talking about? Spontaneous Saturday afternoon conversation, you know.
I think one of the key differences of Discord is that it's open in terms of membership, in terms of being able to join a discussion. It's a little bit more like a, you know, a social network as opposed to Slack, which, you know, if I want to talk to you, if I want to add you to my workspace, I have to, you know, jump through hoops of fire to do that. I think you can just invite someone to your Discord channel, your Discord server, and that's that. And I think that's kind of the way of a platform that's focused on discussion and not so much communication. In other words, you want people to come together and have a discussion as opposed to interpersonal communication. I don't think they're trying to compete with Slack. But it's interesting that you say your company has moved into Discord.
I did not.
But was that from Slack? Were you using Slack exclusively, and then you moved to Discord from Slack?
Skype for 8 years. Last 2 years ago, everyone tried to get onto Slack, and the vibe internally just fell apart. And nobody, you know, it was kind of all right, but I felt very excluded. The dev guys were geeking out, sharing snippets of code because it's very good for that, and
sure,
interlocking with GitHub and blah blah blah. Really tuned for those guys, but the water cooler idea within our internal comms just didn't work for me. We tried it on Discord and we just never went back. It was like, suddenly the water cooler, there's someone hanging out in the water. We turn up for meetings 15 minutes early and catch up with each other and stuff, which you just don't do we weren't doing in another context. As I said,
that's the thing. I think we're at the point where we have a little bit of a glut on the market of, you know, platforms, as Will was mentioning, and they're all good at, you know, they all have virtually the same feature set, but they're all good at one particular thing. I think it's time for the rebirth of Trillion. Do you remember Trillion, Dom?
God.
Do you remember Trillion, Tim?
Yeah, and that actually is sort of exactly what I'm saying, Mark.
To your point, yeah.
Search across all your instant messaging and find things. You know, I 100% agree. If there was something that let me have the benefits of Slack, but the searchability across all my messaging, I would be totally down for that.
Not just searchability, but interactivity. It'd be great to have an app that had all of the platforms included in it, and be able to communicate, to send a message across Slack or Discord or email or SMS or whatever you want with one application. That would be very compelling.
I found something interesting this morning. So, you know, I've got 6 different Slacks because when I consult with multiple companies, everybody wants to give you your own Slack login.
You're a man of mystery, sure. Tim. We know you have to wear a balaclava when you go to your customers.
What I found fascinating this morning is I really rely on Google Voice because I have multiple Google Voice numbers. And it was always
multiple Google Voices. I was getting even weirder now. Hello,
Steve. What was fascinating was it was always a pain to have to copy a phone number into Google Voice to make a phone call from my phone. And I don't know if this is part of 14.5, which is in beta, but essentially now on a phone number on my iPhone, if I press and hold it, it'll give me WhatsApp to call from, Google Voice to call from, Standard to call from, Skype to call.
Ooh.
So it essentially gives me all those choices of where I want to generate the call. And that's really handy because if the Google Voice number is tied to a particular consulting project I'm doing, but my WhatsApp number is tied to, you know, doing communication, like I said, with companies in India, then it makes it really easy for me to decide how I want to make the interaction with, you know, the person depending on their preference, which I think is ultimately where we're trying to go with a lot of this stuff too.
Yeah, no, I agree. But so look for the SMAF Discord server coming soon. Yes, Dom?
Well,
to the public.
I've got to get you guys into it. And once
I'm in there. I'm there, man.
I'll sign up, Dom. I'm the laggard. I'll sign up.
We need to just look at the tools and work out how to shape it up. But it would be quite interesting. I was trying to work out if I can simulcast next month's SMAF into Discord.
So one last question on this topic, Mark. Bill, you mentioned that your company uses it for marketing and obviously uses Slack for internal. What is it about Discord from a marketing standpoint that makes sense? Is it because your potential customers are on Discord?
So the interesting thing with Discord is that it's quite huge in the gaming market. Now, being the gaming market being a vertical that we're very keen on. So if you want to reach out larger gaming communities, then Discord is really the way forward for that. You see how easy they're using it. They start chatting and then add the audio while they're gaming. And so if you want to reach that larger community, then definitely you have to use Discord for that.
And Nadine, you said you use WhatsApp for marketing. That, I guess I'd never really thought about it that way. How do you use that from a marketing standpoint?
Yeah, actually, we do that. I mean, we started to do this a few months back. So basically, we are a business direct to consumer, right? So we have our customers are our viewers, and there should be ways of communication other than the social media. So social media is pretty huge for us. Like the followership on the different platforms is very huge, and we do direct messaging as well with the audience and stuff like this. But there's another element to it when we send directly to the mobile app a message or so through WhatsApp. So we have a WhatsApp business WhatsApp number, and then people would subscribe to be part of that service for free, and then we send them information on a weekly basis, like the new shows that we are releasing, new episode of something that they are really interested in, and we treat it something like the push notifications on the app. Something very similar to that, of course, with some limitation on that, because obviously you cannot be targeting based on the viewing habits and things like this, but you still can target by the countries through the numbers from where they're coming from. So we can specifically target them with some shows or some new topics, promos that we've created and things like that.
And unlike the old SMS marketing where you could only just send them a plain text, you're essentially able to send rich media as part of this as well, I'm assuming too.
That's true. And this is a very important point, because with SMS, you don't have the consent of the user to use they feel that it's like more of a spam, right? And they would hate it. They would, even if you're sending a very interesting offer. I mean, from the SMS campaigns that we've done a few years back, I mean, the ROI was very, very low, right? I mean, when it comes to WhatsApp, there's the user has told you that I want to be part of your group and I want to hear more about what you guys are doing. So they are happy to hear from us, and then accordingly, the outcome is completely different.
Cool, awesome. Mark?
I think that's part of the mystery of a platform like Discord, and the reason why, Dom, you can't put your thumb on exactly why it's so compelling is because part of it is the origin of the use of that platform. Like Nadine mentioned, I think it's impossible to, effectively market to anyone through, text, through SMS, MMS, messaging, because everyone still has this, unless you're a very young, consumer, you still have this concept of text being this thing that used to cost money. It used to be something that, if someone was reaching out to you proactively through a text, it was probably spam. So I don't think we'll ever get over that hump. And so, same thing with Skype, with Slack versus Discord. I think, again, they both have very similar feature sets. Slack is a little bit more limited in terms of access, but it was the platform that you use to replace email. It was the platform that coders use to share, snippets of code. It is not a discussion forum, although it ostensibly has the same feature set as Discord. So I think it's just a matter of personal perception. Yeah.
A few bits of WebRTC and some HTML, and away we go, isn't it?
and Mark, if you have any way for me to stop the yes on H106 text messages I keep getting, I would love to know, because I don't live in California. I don't even have a California number, and yet I get all these spam texts telling me to vote yes on H106. So.
Well, did you?
Only in my alter ego that was out in California.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. So I think the next time we had on the list, we're talking about video conferencing and Zoom fatigue and things like that. That's been a hot button topic in the media lately. As we come to the end of COVID, we start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel here. This, by the way, I should mention, I have my appointment for my first vaccine shot.
Oh,
I'm
do
very,
that again,
very
Mark.
happy
Sorry,
about
I just for the first time I decided to do a spotlight in the middle. There we go. That's what we need.
Ta-da! Yeah,
good.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, I mean, unless someone shows up at my clinic, they can't use the QR code, so I think we're fine. But yeah, as we get to the end of this crazy dark tunnel, I think we're starting to see people a little bit more and more resistant to hopping on a Zoom, because it's half of your average day is spent on Zoom or on a similar platform. Be interesting to see if we get back to something where we're spending less of our time on it and we're less resistant to it when it does pop up. But we were talking before we joined here about the fact that people are less and less likely these days to primp themselves and turn on their cameras and make sure that they're presentable. It's almost a power move, I find, these days, to leave your camera off and let people wonder where you are, and just talk by voice like we used to on conference calls. I think it became very much the thing to do at the beginning of the pandemic, to use to turn on your camera and use it as an analog to real, in-office interpersonal communication. And I think that's a little bit gone out the window. What are your thoughts on it, Tim?
Well, I came out of video conferencing before I was in streaming. That's sort of what led me into streaming. And I had this conversation the other day with the company who's sponsoring the virtual events, virtual conferences survey we're getting ready to do. That those of us who were in video conferencing in the early days, the resistance we found was almost exactly what you described of, do I really need to be on camera? Because if you did a conference call sitting at your desk, you could put it on mute, put it on the speakerphone, do whatever you wanted to during that period of time, and then just make sure that you paid attention so that if they called on you, you knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. Or the pros would actually take it off speakerphone occasionally and go, "That's great, I agree." So that you felt like they were enjoying.
That's great. I totally agree.
and I think what we've learned here is that behavior, which was, I've been almost 24 years in streaming. That was video conferencing in the mid 90s. That very much was the case then. What was also interesting then was, you had to go to an actual room to do it. You couldn't sit like what I'm doing, where I've got, a laptop I have a real map on the wall. I don't have a virtual background, but you had to go somewhere. And when you went somewhere, it made it more formal. I think there's still, Cisco tried to push toward presence a couple of years ago, where you basically sat at half a boardroom table and you saw the people coming in sitting at the other half of the boardroom table, so that you could have these virtual meetings that felt like you were sitting face to face. There's a model for that, but for this, I think to a certain extent what we've done is taken a consumer experience and tried to business it up, and we all sort of against the limitations on it. So I think the fatigue around the way we do it is real. I think we'll continue to do it, but maybe on our own terms. And ultimately, I think there's a huge market for audio-centric solutions, such as like you're talking about, Dom, with Discord, where video gets added in extra, on the assumption that short of a conference or a trade show where there are people I've not met before, I don't really need to see what you're doing while we're having the conversation, nor do you need to see what I'm doing.
And I think that's the key. I think we need to, and I think that the load in the press, that all the coverage that Zoom fatigue is getting in the press right now, including an article that I flipped into the Flipboard, written by a colleague of mine, is beneficial, because I think we'll end up with a list of informal rules for engagement, if you will, for Zoom calls. In other words, when is it necessary for you to turn on your camera? When is it beneficial? When does it add to the experience? And when does it detract from the experience? I think, the gist of a lot of these articles is that there are some psychological, principles at play here, where you know, if you're watching someone on a camera, there's some cognitive load to it as to, you know, you interpreting their micro expressions and their body language and things like that maybe isn't necessary, you know, and requires that your focus is split from what they're actually trying to say. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the outcome is of all of this coverage and how Zoom handles it, how all the different platforms handle it with regard to their official take on it. But I think bottom line, no one is, you know, really aware of what's at play, what's going on in what has become half of our, you know, daily lives now. And I think that'll be beneficial when everyone has kind of a more common understanding of what's happening behind the eyes, if you will.
Yeah, can I add to that?
Please.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah. So I totally agree with you, Mark. Because what happens is that now in this pandemic situation, all our meetings are being replaced by a Zoom meeting. So in a normal situation, you would have face-to-face meetings with a colleague, but you would also have your phone calls with customers. And suddenly all these phone calls, these are now Zoom meetings. All the meetings you have with your colleagues are Zoom meetings. You have your did you call it, Dom, sitting at a coffee machine or water cooler?
The water cooler, yeah.
Water cooler. Yeah. These are Zoom meetings. So everything has become a Zoom meeting. And I agree, Mark, not necessarily all your meetings have to be face-to-face. If I call a customer, I can still call a customer. I don't need a Zoom meeting for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to sort of, as you mentioned, go back to what is the intention of that meeting, and then see, okay, what kind of tool do I use to have that meeting?
I think that it's important to pay attention to why that is. Why has everything become a Zoom meeting? I think for me it's the ubiquity of it. I'm not scheduling a Zoom meeting with you if it could be a phone call because I want you to look at my face. I'm scheduling it because I know you have Zoom. I know you know how to join my meeting. And I know that if I schedule it, you're more likely to join than if I say, you know, Mark calls Tim at noon in the invite, and maybe it ends up on your calendar, but you're then waiting for me to call your mobile phone or something like that.
I hasten to add, I've cancelled 3 normal PSTN phone calls today and moved them to Zoom just because of audio quality.
Yeah, that too. I mean,
it just works, and it sounds good. You know,
there's a host of reasons why we do that. I think it's back to my point. I think it will be helpful to have a list of rules as to, because I do it by default. A lot of people don't, and when I do it, people join and they're like, oh, are we not turning on our cameras? Okay, well, I guess I'll shut off my camera now. And it's a little jarring to them that I scheduled a Zoom and I don't want to see their face. You're not going to see my face half of the time, and I don't necessarily need to see your face. But it's on this common platform that has become the ubiquitous de facto, you know, standard platform for everyone, and that's why I use it.
I saw Nadine come off my mute there. Did you have a point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's one more thing that we need to look at when we look at Zoom in different countries. So I believe in some countries where the mobile phone calls are charged, unlike some other countries which is not charged, having the ability to Zoom or Teams becomes very important for them, right? Because earlier to the pandemic, the voice over IP or the video calls or the conference calls over IP in a lot of countries are banned by default. So having, you know, fast forward, the pandemic is there, and then you have the Zoom, and then you have the Teams, and then countries need to allow them to have, you know, all of the communication happening. So people tend to, you know, use them more often. So that's one. The other point that I wanted to say is that, Mark, you had a very interesting thing that you said about the psychology, about the, you know, the face-to-face, having the video and seeing the people in front of you. And I think what you said is like completely contradicts with what we have learned about public speaking and communication, where, you know, the eye contact is very important. You know, you need to see the body language and things like this. And what you were saying right now is that maybe it's a distraction, actually, and it doesn't add to the conversation. So it's really interesting for me to see how things are going to go over the coming years, and how we're going to be reacting to all of these changes, because I'm still of a person who is a believer in the live meetings and, you know, face-to-face meetings, seeing people and body language and, you know, having all of these elements within the communication that adds a meaning to our sentences, especially in mixed cultures, you know, environments where sometimes the language is a boundary. Like somebody would say something and then what they mean is completely something else. Like we deal with people from all around the world. With some people, like I get sometimes into meetings where my team would say, okay, the other person in the line, they are just shouting at us. I mean, what do you expect us to do? And I'm like, no, they're not. I mean, this is the way that they communicate. They're
animated, yeah, animated.
Absolutely. This is their tone. You know, it's not like if you see them with you live in a meeting, they're going to be laughing while shouting. You know what I mean? So that would help in making it easier for the different cultures, you know, to collaborate.
Absolutely. And I think as you know, all these articles that I'm talking about, these psychologists are weighing in, and the science on the psychology is clear with regard to the benefits that you get from interpersonal reaction, where eye contact is very important, where microexpressions are very important. Those same benefits are proving out, you know, not to be the case in video conferencing and that sort of thing. So it's more beneficial to just kind of remove them from the equation and have your verbal communication be the focus. So
I think it's
Eric is on, by the way.
Oh, hey,
Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Hey,
He has a
y'all.
giant cat behind him, I believe, or something.
No, this
It's
is
an
how I feel
orangutan.
today. This is how I feel today. Am I the orangutan or am I the little rodent?
Does that mean you feel endangered?
Those otters.
Otters?
Those.
Yes.
Those otters? Fantastic.
Yeah. So
Do you
I'll
feel
leave it to
deeply
you to determine which one of those critters I am,
you feel deeply endangered at the moment, Eric?
or I'm the one endangering people.
Yeah. Oh, maybe.
I shall remain reticent.
So I think one last point on the Zoom conferencing and so on. I think as a community, I've noticed that, you know, streaming engineers, we don't tend to turn video conferencing on. And I years ago, I used to pick up my family thought that was odd, but you work with video conferencing with all these videos. Why don't you video conference with your colleagues all the time? And we never, ever do. And I think it's kind of important as people look to the engineering world who have been at the front of this technology for a long time for any steer. I think it's important that we give them permission to turn the video tools off. Just because they're there doesn't mean they are the right thing to be using. And if it's giving you fatigue to the point that it's actually a topical debate, can we turn our Zooms off on Fridays because we've all spent the whole week staring at a camera? We need to say that's okay. Otherwise, what'll happen is it'll be turned on us as if we're forcing video on people, and that's not what we're doing. We know it's not the best thing to do in all circumstances.
Let me make an observation, though, Dom, and I think this sort of segues the survey that we're getting ready to take. One of having been in video conferencing before this, where you would use video as the interim between your face-to-face meetings because it was too expensive to fly a whole bunch of people everywhere. And also knowing that people were really uncomfortable seeing themselves on screen, which is why we sort of went to that model where we turned off our video if we were forced to use video to go out. Sorry, we turned off our video feedback while we were forced to do video to other people. One of the things this company who is sponsoring the survey said is what they found fascinating was CEOs tended to be less technologically savvy. The engineers were more savvy. They've used Zoom long enough that they're comfortable turning the video off. But the CEOs and the senior execs are just sort of getting into using it through the pandemic. And as a result, they do want to see the body language from the people that they're interacting with to know that they're getting, I guess, that they're being heard or what have you. The argument there was, it may be having to train corporate management to allow us to turn things off, as opposed to us being, you know, just feeling like it's a waste of time because we've been so used to using it.
Yeah, and I think you know, that's one of the many benefits that'll come from this kind of newfound focus and on Zoom fatigue and its impact. I mean, I haven't seen an article yet that talks about the, you know, impact, the actual impact of productivity, and, you know, what a CEO or a COO might care about with regard to Zoom fatigue. So it'll be interesting to see.
I mean, I've spent 25, 30 years working from home, and the first and foremost problem you get with video conferencing is backache. It's physical, and everyone laughs, but most of us will have spent money at some point in having some sort of back treatment from simply being locked at a desk anyway. So when I'm on a call, I'm not in front of my desk at all. I'm always moving around, and it's really important to be doing that, because if I spend 46 hours a week at a desk, I get back problems, and that's a waste of money.
Well, you just need a Facebook portal. That's all you need. You need something that'll follow you around the room.
Or you need to wear a baseball cap like Mark, and put a little camera out here so that you can wander around.
Perfect.
To that point, Dom, I've noticed that some marketing of PTZ cameras is now talking about that very thing, about for people who need to be on video calls, but are, whether it's because they're using a physical whiteboard behind them in a sales presentation or something like that, they need the ability to move around. I've seen that marketing come up saying, be able to move around during your Zoom calls, get a PTZ camera.
Yes, I pity Mevo. If they'd released their cameras a year later, they would have integrated with Zoom, and it would have been a completely different proposition. But the Mevo camera was the nuts, but it was just too locked down to be to meet that video conferencing market.
Oh man, the nuts! I have not heard that one before. That's fantastic. Thank you, Dom. that has now entered my vocabulary. Beautiful.
And Parker Vision had this kind of camera, Eric, 15 years ago, that would basically follow you around a room and do a virtual shotgun mic out to where you were. The problem was they were for video conferencing, so they cost $6,000. Right. And these days, if we spend more than $45 on a webcam, there's something wrong.
And I think I just saw the other day, is it Logitech or Belkin, or one of those has a base now, a pan tilt base for your phone that'll follow you around the room. You stick your phone in it, throw up a Zoom call, and it'll follow you around the room. I'll find it and throw it in the Flipboard.
Nice.
But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Speaking of which, so we wanted to talk a little bit, now that we're talking about video conferencing platforms, about kind of the state of virtual events, and some of these, a lot of these that we're working on, originate in Zoom. Like we're taking a Zoom meeting, or more often a Zoom webinar, and adding a lot of production elements to it and plussing it up and then pushing it out, either keeping it within the Zoom platform or pushing it out to YouTube or Vimeo or Facebook or something like that. And there's been a lot of chatter as to what the current state is and where it should go, and what the models are, and with regard to hybrid events. I know, Will, you had some thoughts on hybrid events in general, and what trends are you seeing?
Yeah, so actually last week we were streaming an event for the EBU, Broad Thinking, and they did a nice job where they had an actual stage in Geneva, where there was a host and with some screens in the background, and all the panelists and presenters were coming in via a Zoom webinar session. But then it was it was done quite nicely and produced quite nicely with some production feeds going into an Amazon cloud solution, and then broadcasted over public CDN. And I think that's the way forward, where you would have some centralized live stage where you would have a host, where you have some production facility mixing in the right speakers at a time, because if you would continue to do it in just purely Zoom webinar, then it looks like the session you had before with your colleague. So you have to have it in a more professional way in doing that. And I think that, Mark, you mentioned that you could even go into the further stage and doing it also with some multiple locations and having a combination of audience in a room and some audience via the digital way.
Yeah, we've been doing, those, and we've tended to refer to them as digital first events. And I think that the change really happened with this shift to a more digital audience, to where you used to have a conference and maybe you had 1,000 people on site and then there were a few hundred people watching online. That has now flipped completely, and you've got the lion's share of your audience is digital. So instead of continuing to keep them as the second class citizen and having this live event that's being held and you've got some people there and they're all interacting and they all get to have the benefits of that interaction and that sort of thing, and then you also have this digital audience, we're trying to put the digital audience first, and thereby producing the event as a digital only event, and then having watch parties, if you will, either one or many areas, physical locations where people are watching the digital event, and then they get to interact, they get to have a luncheon or a cocktail hour or whatever, conversations in the hallway, etc. But they're everyone's on a common ground in terms of the actual presentation and the experience and the access to the speakers and that sort of thing. And that's been compelling for a lot of people.
Yeah. So what I think is the most difficult part is that in the good old days when you went to a conference and there were some demos. These demos were always during the coffee break. But the good thing is that it was in the space where you had a coffee break. So with an online conference, if there is a coffee break, then you actually have a coffee break. So everyone moves away from his desk and going to get some coffee. But you don't have the same demo style as what you had.
You'll be delighted that we're going to fit around exactly that. Our coffee breaks will have continuity through the Content Delivery Summit. We're going to be having more informal demonstrations and chats with people, fireside chats during the coffee breaks, because exactly that. We went to coffee break and hold on, why have we just said go away to an audience? We've been really working to come to this event. So yeah, we're going to keep continuity right through the whole show.
The question is what
on the money with that.
Are you guys interested to see what's happening with IBC? Because IBC is now going to present themselves as a hybrid event.
For me,
Very
IBC is about the beach, and unless they can bring the beach to me, IBC is not going to work. It's about the serendipity of all those engagements, and that is something that only happens in real life.
The key word there, Dom. And Eric, in my article or my column, actually, I think that went out this last month.
Yeah, it's up on streamingmedia.com now if you scroll down to the column section.
I can sell, I can do everything else, but I can't market without properly without that face-to-face engagement at the beach.
And for me,
yesterday.
Go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
I was talking to one of my writers, who also Nadine Krefitz, who's probably watching. She usually does. We were talking about how, for us as journalists or conference programmers, or even moderators at conferences, how do we find speakers? We look through the business cards we got or the contacts we put into our phone, and those typically come, again, not so much from the sessions or even the trade show floors and booths as they do from the beach at IBC or from the cocktail parties afterwards. That's where you meet these people, and you also build that relationship with them, so you're not, cold calling them or cold emailing them or cold messaging them on LinkedIn. So we've lost a whole year and a half of that.
We should be clear. I think we have a tendency to talk about all of these business gatherings in the same breath. Like we talk about trade shows in the same breath with conferences, in the same breath with symposiums, in the same breath with, sales kickoff meetings, what have you. And they're all pretty different in terms of the goals and what you're trying to achieve. And I think, for a trade show, when NAB rolls around, typically in a normal year, I'll go to the trade show floor maybe one day, maybe 2 days, tops. And I'm really there for dinners with customers, cocktail parties afterwards. That's where the real conversations happen. That's where I meet new people. That's where I collect business cards, et cetera, to your point. But if I'm coming to a conference that is maybe, my colleagues in a very specific industry talking about a very specific thing, or it's a sales meeting and it's a bunch of my coworkers and maybe there's some new folks that I want to meet or something like that, that's a very different thing. And it really is about the event and not necessarily the social engagement around the event. It's about the event itself. So it's those opportunities that I think people are really focused on, trying to recreate or replicate that water cooler, serendipitous hallway conversation sort of thing, where it's definitely more important there than it is for
they're all trying to copy SMAF. They're just trying to copy SMAF.
So I want to hear Nadine's perspective too, but real quick, let me say this, Mark. You said you hardly ever go on the show floor. For me, I guess coming from having to cover stuff where you get tons of press releases the 3 weeks prior, I fight to keep my show floor time intact. And in fact, I will take, when I say serendipity, the last day of a show like NAB or IBC is when I can get real answers from people at the booth, because the marketing people are gone, the sales people are gone, the executives are gone, and all that's left are the engineers, and they'll tell me whether it's vaporware.
And they're all hungover, and they just want to answer your questions and have you go away. That's all.
Tim,
Tim.
Sorry,
you're telling the secret.
Don't tell them this. Next year, there's going to be no one there on Friday, and they're all going to be stacked up on Monday with the engineers.
So Nadine, from you obviously work with a distributed group of people as well, but what about in-person conferences and like that? What do you miss? What don't you miss? How are virtual events working for you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of what have been said about the in-person conferences, whether it is IBC, whether it is MIPCOM. I really miss these experiences because, as an example, MIPCOM, you see all of the content creators from around the world gathering in one place, and then the decision makers going there. So it's an opportunity of more than, it's just business development, meeting new people, having, building your network at the same time, exploring new content, like having this opportunity will never exist on the virtual, from a virtual perspective. Like from my place here in Dubai, I will never have this experience of meeting all of these people, even people who are in Dubai, that sometimes it's very difficult for us to meet for whatever reason it is. I mean, having all of these people going into the same place at the same time, it's just making them there. So just like there's no excuse. It's just, meetings and socializing and lunches and dinners and things like this. So I think most of the interesting business deals happen through these conferences. It kicks in new ideas that was not thought through. So I really believe in them, and I wish that we go back into these days where we have these conferences in person. And I have my view when it comes not only to the major conferences, but also Zoom meetings with friends, and even in terms of business development, or even with colleagues at work. I always feel that all of these video conferences and streaming and stuff like this does not drive properly the brainstorming sessions. I always miss this. The only time that we really create these creative ideas is when we meet in person, when we have different people coming from different backgrounds in the same place, or even in a meeting room, and then you have your creative director sitting somewhere there, and then you come up with an idea, and then you ask, oh, come over, what do you think about that? And then you draw things on the wall, on the board or whatever, and then you start building on top of the ideas. While right now with the team meetings, as an example, what you'll go in is a predefined agenda of what exactly needs to be said and what decisions you need to drive, and nothing creative about that, because you cannot just we need to be creative at point number 5. It just does not happen.
Yeah, very good point.
Agreed. Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of, potentially compelling ways to promote creativity, to, require it to some extent in a gathering, whether it's on a break or something like that, and you've got what would normally be called a team building exercise, but focused around coming up with creative solutions to problems and things like that. So I think there's all of these kind of artificial ways of doing what to your point, Nadine, comes naturally in a typical in-person meeting. And we're over a year now into this. I don't think we've seen anything, at least I haven't, that is truly effective in that way. I don't think we've been able to replicate the serendipity of an in-person meeting, and I don't think we will. that may be a bold prediction on my part, but I don't think it's possible necessarily. I think someone would have cracked the code by now if it were. So any thoughts on that as we wrap up?
No, I totally agree. I mean, you can do a lot with these virtual meetings, but at the end, I think we're all people. We want to sort of communicate with each other directly. So will we go back to all these conferences and trade shows? Not sure. There will be a part that remains online. And especially with the digital first, as you mentioned, Mark. But I guess the larger trade shows like the IBC, NAB, and MIPCOM, as Nadine mentioned, those will stay, and that will be physical meetings.
I hope you're right. I can't wait to to get back to some semblance of one of the few parts of business interaction that I enjoy.
I'm going to overrun just a little bit with just a little comment on that. I'm slightly more optimistic. I think that we are now adopting these technologies at a mass level where we haven't before. And despite the fact that I think sometime later this year, everyone's going to rush out to, or maybe early next year, whenever it is, we're going to rush out, reconvene, do things that were old for historic patterns. I also think that there'll be a bounce back from that when we'll go, actually, do you know what? I was keeping up with people a whole lot more in a whole lot more globally distributed way, in a much more free way using Zoom and video conferencing. I'm going to carry on doing that as well. And I don't think that it's going to be a flip-flop. I think we're going to have a restoration of some of the patterns that worked, but augmented by a lot of new capabilities and so on. So although everyone will rush out to the pub, a few weeks after everyone's rushed out to the pub, they're going to go, do you know what? I wasn't wasting nearly so much money in the pub during the pandemic. I think I'm going to go and keep that in my pocket and go and hang out with my mates online. So,
yeah, I think there will be a balance. There will be a point of balance where we have to, figure out what was really useful, what was really, what did I really miss? Did I miss this? Maybe I didn't miss just, gathering casually. I missed gathering casually with this group of people, or with this, talking about this subject, or with some sort of goal in mind. I think that's going to be important to make that distinction, as opposed to just let's all get back to exactly how it was. I think we'll find some point of balance there.
A hybrid solution.
Yeah, exactly, a hybrid solution, if you will. Good way to end it. Dom, did you want to run over a little bit and find out what Nadine and Will are up to moving forward?
Yeah, do you want to just fill us in what you guys are going to be up to, where you're tuning into over the next few weeks and so on? Any big events online that you're going to be attending, Nadine?
Yeah, actually, I have a conference coming up very soon, CapSat in April, and then April or May, probably. No, in May, sorry. And then, the biggest thing that's happening in the region, in MENA region for now, is the having Ramadan coming up. And I don't know, guys, if you are familiar with that, but it's a season where, our business really thrives, and the content creation and the move, and not the movie side, the series side, and the drama series and the series and the shows really get a lot of traction. So we're at a very busy time nowadays, trying to prepare for it. It's 2 weeks, down the line, mid of April. So we're very busy getting new content, populating it into the platform, upgrading all of our servers, because we expect a spike in traffic normally that goes to triple or quadruple.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's normally it. So the graph goes like this, and then suddenly like this, and then it goes back after a month. So it's crazy out here. So it's the busiest time of the year. So this is going to be, it's already very interesting for us. We've been producing original content for the platform. We're really excited to see how it's going to perform during the month of Ramadan. We're acquiring a lot of content as well. So it's a pretty exciting time that's coming up.
Awesome. Oh, well, excellent. Well, we'll have to get you back in a bit later in the year and to tell us how it's all been going. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Nadine. It's been a real pleasure having you on.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Look forward to being in touch more. And Will, what have you got coming up?
Well, actually, no big conferences or events in the planning so far, but more focus on low latency streaming over multi-CDN. So there are some challenges with that. So especially if you're going into low latency CMAF, then you see that for all the different CDNs, their implementation is a bit different. So that's a bit challenging, and also looking into high efficiency streaming protocol from TIO. So yeah, more on the technical side nowadays.
I know a software company that might be able to help you with some of that low latency CDN stuff. So.
Well, let's have a chat.
Excellent, Mark. What have you got coming up? Oh, sorry, I didn't say thanks. Will, thanks very much. Really lovely to have you on as well. So,
it was a pleasure.
What do I have coming up? Just a lot of projects coming up for customers. Like I mentioned at the top of the hour, we're starting to get back into more entertainment related stuff, which is a long time coming, and I'm very, very thankful for that. There's only so much, business commerce events that I can handle. So yeah, things are looking up, and we're expanding our facility up in Northern California, so that's taking up a lot of our time these days. But things are altogether positive.
Awesome.
How about you?
I told my little one that you were working doing Marvel. There was lots of stuff with Marvel. She's bugging me to get to get out there now.
We did our first event for Marvel since fall of 2019, a couple of weeks ago, and it was wonderful. It was very refreshing to be working with them again. They're a great team. So.
I'm going to have to bring the Sprog out to come and pull some ropes for you or something at one of those.
Definitely.
Events, so.
Been years.
Yes, it has, definitely. So brilliant, Mark. Thanks so much for running as host today. Eric and Tim have had to rush off because they're being pressurized by research partners to finish stuff for the Content Delivery Summit. So on our public side, that's my focus for the next 6 weeks. For the May edition, I will doubtless bore you to tears with all the exciting plans I've got for this year's Content Delivery Summit, which is already getting a lot of interest, which is good. And with my day job hat on, we shall be continuing to sell low latency software to CDNs. Well, yeah, I should be busy.
It's the real reason why you're here, Will.
Yeah. That's why he wanted me on there, and then just
no, it's the real reason why he won't be able to go. But
well, at least he didn't promote his book, so.
No, well, there's a long story about a pirate copy that we can go into, Will, but not right now. So listen, thanks again to all our guests and to all the hosts. We'll be back on the first Thursday of next month. If you fancy a little bit of late night DJing, there'll be drum and bass on the Thursday night show in about 4 hours. I'm going to go and have some dinner. Thanks very much. We'll see you next month.